Okay.
Hello, it's Debbie Gilbert from the Business Awards show, and I'm also the founder of the Best Business Women Awards. And today I'm really excited to introduce my guest, Tracey Barr from the Strategic Link, who is a strategic healthcare advisor, all-round extraordinaire networker. And I mean, I've known Tracey now for probably about 7 or 8 years. We met through a networking group, and I've always been impressed by her support for others. And I asked her this year, would she come on board and be a judge for the Best Business Women Awards? And she said yes. And I was like, yeah, because I knew she would have that granular level of detail that's often needed for judging business awards. So, we're going to talk to Tracey this morning about her journey and also about what the experience was like judging the Best Business Women Awards. So, welcome, Tracey.
Thank you very much, Debbie. Very excited to be here and feel very honoured. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, so we always start the show off by talking about our guests' history and what they've been up to over the last goodness knows how many years. So tell me a bit about what you were doing before you went into your business and what made you start your business up 20 years ago.
Yeah, so I think I suppose I've been working for almost 40 years. So prior to starting my business, I'd had, sort of 20 years of experience. I even worked really at university because I did engineering at university. I was a sponsored student with Ford, which meant I had to work a year before going to university and 3 months every year with them. So working life started at 18, really. And I started off my life as a strategy consultant, specialising in mergers and acquisitions with LEK. I loved it, but it was quite hard and furious work, sort of 100-hour weeks typically. And I really wanted to get some real life experience. So I left there and joined, first of all, Quaker Oats. The Sugar Puffs and Felix Cat Food are probably the best known brands, and spent 2 years there as their European corporate strategy manager. And then exciting time for the NHS in when they purchase the provider split came in, and I applied to an ad in the Sunday Times and managed to get myself a job in the NHS as a deputy director of finance and commissioning. And I spent 4 years working in and around Northwest London in that role. Loved it, but felt there wasn't a clear career pathway. Left and then spent 2 years at Bupa on new commercial developments, and then went back into consulting, which I think probably is because I love project-based work rather than operational roles. And joined Arthur Andersen with a government and healthcare hat on and a strategy hat. Spent most of my time, probably the first 2 years there, working on government and healthcare projects, but then e-business hit and there was a need for people to develop new business models using the sort of new technology that was coming out. And I actually ended up being on the center pages of the Sunday Times supplement as the e-business guru for Arthur Andersen. And probably one of the most successful pieces of work I've ever done, that publicly anyway, that people would recognise, is the development and launch of what is now Rightmove in the UK, which is actually 25 years ago, so long time. And having done that, I was going through the partner process at Arthur Andersen. Realised I didn't want to be a partner in a Big Four company. I didn't fit, and the role didn't fit me either. So I started looking around and exploring my options, and decided I wanted to set up by myself. Actually, about the same time, my mum became really poorly, and I ended up taking on a role which started off as a project. I ended up being the managing director of a small, medium-sized business, Shepherd Day, that needed turnaround. The owners wanted to sell it, and basically, in parallel, I was able to sort of take care of my mum, who sadly passed away. And the combination of her dying and the company selling meant that I basically had that sort of opportunity just to take stock of where I was in my life, age 40, and what I wanted to do. And I made the plunge to work for myself, fully specialising in healthcare, and I've been doing that ever since. So yeah, 20 years
So
later.
20 years ago, working for yourself as an independent consultant was quite a relatively new thing, wasn't it?
It wasn't probably a route that many people thought about as a proper option. And also, I think I probably was faced with quite a lot of I'm going to say criticism, really, almost like I was taking an easy option. I was scared of taking on a corporate role in a senior organization because those were my other options. And being a partner in a strategy consulting firm, which was the other option on the table. But actually, I wanted the freedom and flexibility, not just to choose what I worked on and who I worked with and when I worked, but actually to be able to, although my mum had passed away, I've still got my brother and sister, and they were just starting to have their families, and I wanted to be the very best auntie I could be. They're up north in Cumbria, so that needed me to be able to pop up and down to Cumbria when I wanted to, and spent a lot of time in the early years, especially with my nieces and nephews who are now grown up and don't want to see me quite as much, but they still want to see me, which is lovely. But I that was really important to me and was one of the main reasons for choosing to work for myself.
Yeah, and I think if there was an award for best dancer, you'd definitely win in that one.
Yeah, yes, I'd like to think I would be up there on that. Yeah.
Oh, I love seeing your posts with your nieces and nephews. So let's talk about how you managed to get clients, because obviously this was the world 20 years ago. Social media was just emerging, LinkedIn was just beginning. So how did you manage to garner your first clients?
Yeah, so I think having worked for 20 years, I suppose I had a good personal network.
Mm.
So that was important. But also, I actually went through quite a structured appraisal of comparing working for myself against other things. And I realized that one of the things I needed to do was to be able to get access to new people that I didn't know, and then I explored opportunities to do that, and I came across um, one network in particular that had been set up by two women from ex McKinsey partners called Eden McCallum, and it was a network of strategy consultants, all from sounds a bit snobby now, but top tier strategy firms who were quite selective, of which LEK fitted the brief. Arthur Andersen wouldn't. Um, so the fact I started life at LEK meant that I was a good fit for the network, and it was at its very early stages of effectively being a virtual consulting firm. So they employ people who act as to sell the work, and they pulled together a virtual team of independent consultants to meet the client's requirements. And through Eden McCallum, I got access to new opportunities with people that I didn't know, and that complemented the work that I could do myself. And I also, and I mean, I still am on this, I am an associate of quite a number of small, medium-sized consultancies who specialise in the public sector, particularly healthcare, who can't afford to employ so many people with rich experience, but when they need them, will use me often as a strategic advisor to them, on a small number of days as a partner overseeing the work and helping them to win new work and potentially deliver it. So lots and lots of different irons in the fire,
Yeah.
and no social media presence at all, and no LinkedIn then. But
No.
I was one of the early people onto LinkedIn, but that was probably the main step into social media when that came along.
And do you find you get a lot of work through referrals of people you've already done projects for now?
Yeah, I mean, the majority of my work is word of mouth or repeat business. So it's people that I've worked with before who've moved on to a new organisation or still in the same organisation, actually. Or at a good example, the Drug Safety Research Unit. I worked with them 2 or 3 days, 5 years pre-pandemic. The director left, he'd brought me in. a new director's come in, but the team that were at the DSIU remembered me fondly, and I was asked to bid for a new piece of work, which I actually won, and have just started this summer. So 5 years on, new director. I'd only ever worked for 3 days with them pre-pandemic, but as well as hopefully having a reputation for being good value and delivering a great quality product, I keep top of mind by being on LinkedIn. So I am connected with the business development lead there, who is still at the organisation and sees my posts. So she never comments on them, but I stay top of mind with my LinkedIn posts.
Amazing. And what do you love about what you do? I mean, what drives you to do this?
So the top of my list for anything I want to work on is intellectual challenge and making an impact, positive impact on people's lives. So I like a difficult problem, not one. I don't want to work on anything twice. I want something different each time. So I like intellectual challenge and not an easy way, a difficult problem to solve, but it has to have a positive impact on people's lives.
So we met at a networking group about 7 years ago, which in my view probably wouldn't have been a room full of women that would have been your target audience.
No.
And I'm interested to talk a bit about this because, I'm grateful that you were there because that's how I met you. But as somebody who's in quite a specialised field, what made you join what was really quite a generalised networking group that probably didn't have your ideal client in there? What was your thoughts behind that?
Yeah, so I think it can be very lonely working for yourself. And so I'm not part of any organisation. So I was trying to find a place to belong, and I was looking for like-minded people. So I wanted something quite small, intimate, and interesting, like-minded. Actually, women probably, because I've always been a big supporter of trying to encourage women to come through. I've always been I would like to think a really good mentor to people, to other women earlier on in their stage of career. It certainly was something that I was recognised for at Arthur Andersen. And I've always been someone who is advocating and speaking up for on behalf of female issues. So probably, I like women who are quite strong, independent, like-minded. I didn't join it to find business. I didn't ever expect to get any business from it, but I did want to feel a sense of belonging and being part of something which I'd lost from working by myself.
And that's so important, isn't it? And the actual experience of being in a room full of inspirational women can actually drive you forwards, even if it's not the sole driver isn't about getting business leads. And I think I try and explain this to people sometimes, and they look at me a bit strangely because I think networking has a connotation that you should always have an output to it, as in business leads, when actually there's so many more things you can gain from it.
Yes, and I think you get out of it what you put in. So I think there's that generosity of spirit is really important. And I mean, things have come from it, but not what I would have. I didn't go in with any expectations, but probably the thing that's most strongest from that is the relationship I built with Lynn Parker, who's the CEO of Funny Women. I met Lynn through singing in a choir that was linked into the network, and Lynn and I became firm friends. We were fellow altos, and at that point in time, she was looking for people for an advisory board, and I got involved. And it's over 15 years ago now. It might be probably 18 plus. And I'm currently the chair of the Funny Women actual board because we, as part of the work that we did, the business was set up as a community interest company with a proper board and non-exec directors. So I'm actually the chair of that. It's a non-paid role. I put as much effort and energy into that as I can, as any project, and have got a lot of personal joy and satisfaction from it. But that came from meeting Lynn through networking, and actually, sort of, I would never have anticipated that happening.
Yeah, that's amazing. And just for our listeners, Funny Women is an organisation that promotes women into comedy and supports women in comedy. And Lynn's been doing that now for about 20, 25 years, must be.
22 years.
2 years, an incredible woman and so passionate about really championing women into the comedy sector. So yeah, it's a great thing to be involved with. Um, so that kind of leads me to talk a bit about awards. So when did awards first kind of appear on your radar?
I suppose I've always been aware of awards. I mean, back in my management consulting days, sort of we were encouraged to put forward projects for awards, but they needed to be done jointly with clients. So I actually, for the Right Move one that I mentioned earlier, we won a management consulting award, which I was very proud of because it was 9 months from doing a European research to getting the business launched in the UK. And we had a nice launch party at what was called, I think it was called Home. It was a nightclub in Leicester Square, so it felt very appropriate for the launch.
Mm.
And it was really good recognition for the team, a lot of whom had not worked on, on a big project before. And I'm very proud of this. I'm still in touch with the client, who are an American client, Sendent, and actually the chair of Right Move is still he was the director of finance at Sendent. So every now and again, I get a little message on my LinkedIn from them, which is lovely, and that is 25 years ago. So that project. I was based in Hammersmith for 9 months. I don't think I've ever worked so hard on anything. We did everything from going around all the estate agents to get them to sell the proposition and get their listings up, to managing the development of the website. The guy who led that piece of work, he's since, I've supported him as a mentor. He's launched his own business, sold it. He's now launched a second business. And the two other women that were I was the mentor for, they've got hugely successful businesses. They've gone out to the States actually. So Little Caroline and Big Caroline, we called them. And yeah, I couldn't be prouder of what they've done. So I've got the business, but I've also got the three people who are managing. I was overseeing, but they were managing key components of that piece of work. Have all gone to be really successful business people in their own rights, and I feel like a proud mother actually.
Because who can imagine life without Rightmove? I mean, it is still the world's leading online estate agency, isn't it? Or online portal, I suppose
Yeah,
it's for
yeah, and
buying
it's developed a lot since then. But yeah,
and
very proud of it. Yeah,
be
yeah,
part of that. And I must admit, when you mentioned about Felix, again, that brand has just gone from strength to strength. And they just had Robbie Williams in their adverts. I mean, you
yeah.
missed out on that one, Tracy, for sure.
Well, the story about that was really interesting because we didn't have very much advertising money, and so I worked with the trade marketing people and the consumer marketing people to say how can we be innovative with what we've got, and this black and white cat advertising was cheaper than doing anything else. And we actually created a huge problem for ourselves because across Europe we couldn't deliver enough. We created so much demand, we didn't have enough capacity to generate the pet food. So then I had to do business cases to expand the capacity across the pet food plants in Europe. It's
Wow.
very smelly though. I used to have to put a hanky on my nose to go in the pet food
Oh,
boxes.
yeah. No, it's not a good smell, cat food. It really isn't. So let's talk about the Best Business Women Awards. So you came on board as a judge this year. How
Mm-hmm.
did you find that experience?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it actually. I think I haven't ever really put myself forward for awards, but I always admire people who do, and I think it's actually really. I suppose I saw this as being an opportunity, almost with that sort of mentoring type hat on, to review where people are and see what people are doing, and hopefully to be able to constructively encourage and support people. Um, so I thought I had two categories to judge. I put aside time in my diary, so I had a whole day to go through them all. I had got myself a little process that I was going to do, and I was very impressed by the caliber of of the submissions. I think I said this to you at the time. There were so many really fantastic
Mm.
stories. I think it's probably what hit me is, people both being able to articulate the story and the impact their stories having on that, and importantly, being able to provide the evidence to substantiate that, because for somebody just reading the story, you do need that evidence. So I think that's probably just generally looking through. There were everybody who was on the list. I think you'd already done a fantastic job of filtering. So all of the submissions I felt were very worthy to be on that list. And I think for me, probably the biggest difference was in the quality of the evidence that was supporting the story.
Yeah, and it's important people do that, and they often think that just by putting their details into the form, it's enough, and that you as a judge should be going off hunting for the information online. Literally had a conversation with someone this morning who didn't make the shortlist, and she said, I said, well, really sorry, but your entry didn't have any evidence to it. And she said, oh, well, it's all over my social media. I said, but you can't expect a judge to read through that and then go off and try and find information to substantiate what you've said in your entry. That's not very fair, because it does take a long time anyway, doesn't it?
It does, and I think it's quite clear in your awards. You've done the briefings. You emphasise about the importance of evidence. So I think, as I say, everybody's story. There were lots of really fantastic stories, and it was disappointing. It's, for some of them, I felt quite disappointed, because actually, if they'd just taken a bit of time to put some evidence there, they would have probably got a higher ranking. But the ratings are there as to how it's judged. So it's a very transparent process, which I really liked. It's very clear. You give very good briefing and clear guidelines of what the criteria are. And people can see the weighting, and I feel that, it's a very transparent process. And hopefully, whoever you spoke to this morning will have learned from that, and the next time we'll be able to justify and support their application with that evidence.
Yeah, I mean, she was very nice, but I just, because I have been shouted at this week, let me just say.
I'm
It's
not
always
surprised, because that's, yeah,
she
very
was
emotive.
I know, and we can't shortlist everybody, otherwise there'd be no selection process, would there? It's like crazy to think that. It's like, really?
Well, to be honest, I judge in the Funny Women Awards, so and that is a very I'm doing that at the moment. I never really think about this as being a judge, but I've got three or four online heats next week, which I'll be involved in. But I go along and listen to lots of comedy, and over 15 years plus of worth of watching, I do actually have you get a good gauge. But I think what happens is that it's one or two stories stick out, one or two may not appeal, but there's a lot in the middle, and it's really hard to differentiate yourself. And I think sometimes, sort of, it's a relatively small difference. I think when I was looking at them, it was just something quite small, because everybody had done, there's so putting themselves forward. I know how hard that is and how much time it takes. So I think, the quality was really good, and I think everybody should recognise that, just even getting through to being on the judging is actually just like when we with the Funny Women, not everybody gets through to the heats of the stand-up. Being in the heat in itself is an achievement, and that it's all a learning process.
So with the Funny Women Awards, do they have to put in a comedy sort of video? How does that work? I'm just quite
Yes.
interested, actually.
Yeah, they submitted a video which is looked at, and then based upon that video, then they're invited to live heats, ideally in person, but because it's international, some are online. So we've had about 8 or 10 online. Of the I think I can't remember what the numbers are, but there's lots of entries. Only about 1 in 3 get through to the heats.
And then they do a live final, don't they?
Yeah, a live semi-finals and live final. So yeah, because particularly comedy, it's quite difficult to, because a lot of it's around engagement with the audience. So it's very difficult to judge online, because people are not getting necessarily the interaction and feedback that you get in a live venue. And it's quite interesting. Some people who come across well in a video that's been well prepared, maybe once they get live, less well, less well accomplished in their performance. So lots of people at different stages of their career. There's a lot of people that we see year in, year out who still keep coming back to the awards, and actually, just like with your awards, there are different categories. So
Yeah.
there are, you know, other ways of getting involved. So I actually, that's been my Sunday evenings, going to the Museum of Comedy and watching some of those awards. So that's just in my free time.
That's amazing. I didn't know you did that as
I even buy a ticket. So
fantastic. It's a good night out by the sounds of it. So let's finish off by talking about life as a solopreneur, because you don't have a team, you work for yourself. Um, and if there's people listening to this podcast who are working in consultancy and are working for themselves, what couple of pieces of advice could you give them, bearing in mind you've been doing this on your own for 20 years? What has kept you going and kind of what motivates you?
yeah, so I think it's really important when you start off to be clear about what is it you want to do, what kind of work do you want to do, and also making sure that you've got enough experience and connections. You've worked long enough really to do it. So sort of, you're not, it's very difficult to start off by yourself if you're going into something you've not actually got very much experience in, and you're not well connected or well known in. So I think that's be very considered about what it is you're doing to set up. So plan in advance. Often, the best way to do it is to think about it while you're still working, and see if you can actually. I helped people at Shepherd Day do this, who wanted to set up by themselves. See if you can reduce your working commitment to maybe 3 days a week. So you've got 2 days a week to work on your own business before you actually go live with 5 days a week. So that would be tip number one. Tip number two, when you're sort of setting up by yourself, I mean, it is lonely. So I have two ways in which I try to deal with that. One is actually finding a nice in-person network if you can, because you work, particularly now post pandemic, it can be quite soul destroying working at home alone. And so if get out, meet people, talk to people, and there's lots of local networks around. So I would find those, and find a professional network if you're, like for me, I'm a strategy consultant, so strategy work is important. But if you're, depending what your business is, find a business network that has got people that might be your kind of people for work. And then also, I've got co-working space. I know it's a cost, but I don't have a full-time co-working. I have a number of hours per month, and I like that because I'm surrounded by other people who are working, usually small, medium-sized businesses. And I've picked really beautiful co-working space because I like that mindset. I don't feel like I'm necessarily, my home is my office. And then I think, fourth of all, sort of, I think there's that recognition. You've got to be able to manage it. It'll be a bit of feast and famine. It doesn't all run smoothly. There will be times when you haven't got any work. And that is really, really difficult, going through a drought. Everybody does it. It's nothing to do with you. It's just about a flow of work. So I think, just in terms of, sort of mental resilience, having those people that you can talk to, and doing other things that keep you busy. Like, I'm on a pro bono network. That means I'm still working and doing something positive. I'm not getting paid for it, but it's better than sitting at home trying to find work when it isn't there. And when it's I'm on a bit of a feast at the moment, because I've actually got lots of work that everybody wants finishing before they go on holiday. So even when I went away to Toulouse last week, I had to take work with me. It is just how it is, and I've got that mindset. It's just like, it's fine. This is what I do, because I actually will work hard when I need to, and when I don't have the work, I will take the time out to relax and enjoy myself.
Let's also talk a bit about F Entrepreneur,
Yeah.
because you and I are both part of that.
Mhm.
And I found it's really good recognition, and that'll be opening up again in September. And you've been part of it a long time, haven't you, as well?
Mm.
Uh, and F Entrepreneur, we don't think of as an award. However, I always think of it as being recognised. It is a form of
Mm.
recognition recognition. You don't get a trophy, but you get to be part of this amazing community of women, of which there's probably about 600 or 700 of us now, isn't there? It's loads.
Yes, each year it just expands
So,
by 100. Yeah.
you obviously got recognised through that program. And what have you found beneficial about F Entrepreneur?
I think, as you say, it is that recognition. So there's that feeling, especially because I don't really put myself forward for anything, and I think it is just that kind of recognition. But I think particularly as it's evolved over time, it's that learn and share community, and it's got a much more I'm going to say national reach
Yeah.
now. And I suppose that connection with Small Business Britain is really important. So
Mm.
the issues that Small Business Britain are channeling are very relevant to everybody on the in that community, including sort of particular support that might be needed for female entrepreneurs. So I think naturally it's a very supportive network. Yeah, I would say I always enjoy the sort of coming together. I think it's a slow. I tend to know the people from my own intake for their own year better, because we are there's 100 of you, so I think
Mm.
that getting to know the people that have become F entrepreneurs at the same time is really good. I mean, that's how Lynn Stanier, for example, I met her in the queue at the House of Lords. I've actually done some of my low pro bono work for her charity, Their Future Today, and supported her events. Lynn and I have actually even been on holiday together. So it is that kind of individual, personal approaches. And then, the F Entrepreneur breakfasts are really, really, really good. If you can tune into them, then you do. And you get a lot of people are very generous with their knowledge and their connections, and will always help. So I think it's a safe space to ask questions, and to just, if you're not feeling great, there'll always be somebody there to support you.
No, I think that's very true. And we'll make sure that link actually for that goes in the show notes, because I think they open up again in September.
Yes.
And let's finish by talking about the book that we worked on.
Oh,
I
yes.
know those of you, well, time just goes. I
I
don't know.
know.
So 15 of us businesswomen got together back in 2022, really, because the book came out in 23, didn't it?
Mhm.
And we wrote a book about collaboration, and it's called Fab Collab. And we all contributed a chapter, didn't we, about our
Did.
collaboration knowledge and experiences. So how did you find that whole process? And because you haven't written a book yourself as yet, maybe that's something you should be doing. But how did you find that whole process?
So I'll just start by I actually enjoy writing. So I haven't written a book, but I have actually written white papers that are published. And I
Right.
also write investment cases, which are over 100 pages. So actually, they're quite difficult.
You've written
Um,
many books then. They're 100
I have.
pages. Yeah.
I have, but I don't, they're not a book as such, but they are publications. So I do actually, I really enjoy writing, even though I'm an engineer by background. So nobody would ever think that I like writing, but I do. And I'd like to think I'm quite good at it. But I sort of a little bit nervous about writing a book, because, your name's on there, and it's people have got expectations. And it was a collaborative, so there were 15 of us, I think, involved. And I'm going to say I enjoyed having the structure of this is the word count, these are the
Mm.
main headings, this is what you need to do. And I also need a time. I'm a project person. I like a deadline. So those two things I really enjoyed. I think probably, I mean, we all reflected on it at the end. I think it was a deliberate process not to read each other's chapters. But as a result, I think probably we could have done better if we'd actually,
Yeah.
maybe at the start, have thought about what each of us would
Mm.
emphasize on, and have a more natural flow to it. But it was, for many of us, it was our first experience. So it was a good dipping the toe into the bath. I don't know
Yeah.
what. Um,
And
I definitely learned a lot from the process. probably not the writing as much, but more the challenge of collaborating with 14 other women who are all different. And some of, I suppose, the lesson for me is that I knew some people better than others.
Mm.
Um, so I did I don't think I didn't actually know who was collaborating with initially. It was an invitation to collaborate, and maybe with hindsight, I think it's just like in the way in which I work. If I collaborate with people on projects, they tend to be people that I actually know quite well, and feel comfortable having a conversation with. And I think there were sort of different levels of relationship. So I think it was I think we all learned from that. I think most people were quite respectful about it, but I'm sure if we were all to do it again, and I'm very, I actually got to know my fellow co-authors much better as a result of that process, and so I would like to think I've built new connections and relationships as a result of it, and we managed to sort of keep the energy going afterwards with the workshop. But I think probably everybody felt that maybe on reflection, if we were to do it again tomorrow, we would do it differently.
Yeah, and I think you were very instrumental in getting the book sort of more organized because we all kind of submitted our chapters and then we did the read through, and a few of us were like, this doesn't really flow. And you were very instrumental in helping that book have the flow that it's got and the finished product. Because I think the flow was really important, that it took the reader on a journey from thinking about early stages of collaboration and why collaborate through to some of the stories to kind of the legacy of collaboration, which is what I wrote about. So I think, yeah, it was an interesting experience, wasn't it? I mean, I'm
It
quite
was.
proud of what we achieved with it in the
Yeah,
end.
yeah.
Um, it was an interesting experience, but I personally just think 15 people in one book is just too much.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I'll be honest, I probably wouldn't have be a published author on a book if we hadn't done
Oh,
that process. But
yeah,
it's probably made me think, yes, I could write a book, but I'd
you
need time. And in fact, it's quite interesting because when I was at LEK, the K is a chap called Richard Koch, who is a very well recognized business author on the 80/20 principle, applied to lots of different things. He's interviewed me for his latest book, so I got to read that. But he's taken the theme and written several business books around it, and yeah, and I'm quite well feel quite privileged to still be in touch with him and invited by him because he's incredibly successful. But yeah, so he's changed my name in it to a different name so that I'm not recognised by in terms of when he talks about me. But it was interesting because I spoke to him about writing his books, and he's now got a publisher that is encouraging him to write with a particular focus. But yeah, I think I would like to write a book, and I wouldn't be anti doing a collaborative book,
right.
but probably with possibly 5 people, not
Yeah, I
15.
think that's a good number, 4 to 5. I do. I've just contributed to another book recently, which comes out next year on authenticity in business, written by Dee Blick, who has written a number of books about marketing. And she contacted me, and I mean, one of my pieces is about 1,500 words long, so it's quite a hefty contribution. Um, but it wasn't done in the same way we did the whole, it's her book, and she's invited a few people to contribute their advice. I think the problem we had was that there wasn't really a hierarchy of who was in charge, and we're all very strong-willed, strong-minded business women. Oh dear. It was quite funny at times, but I mean, we had a lovely launch event. We really did,
We
and
did.
we went on to run a 1 day workshop, which was also really great. And shared so much knowledge for people. So, thank you for joining me today.
That's all right. You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I
It's
don't get
been
to have a
great
good
chatting
chat with you that
to you.
often.
I know, and we will definitely put all your details into the show notes. So do connect with
Thank you.
Tracey on LinkedIn. She can often be seen at various networking events across London, so you can go and meet with her at one of those. And it's been a pleasure working with you on the awards. I hope you'll come back next year and be a judge again because you were
I'd
absolutely
love to.
And we really value your expertise because it's not easy finding really good judges for awards. So it was great to work with you. So thank you for joining me today, and I wish you
Thank you.
continued success, Tracy.
Thank you very much, Debbie. Absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.